Hi, this is Adorable Andrew, and today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to review one movie that I was underwhelmed by, and one movie that I thought was surprisingly good. First, I'd like to talk about G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. Now, while I don't remember the cartoon particularly well, I'm pretty sure this movie doesn't bear much resemblance to it, and that's to be expected from Hollywood interpretations of graphic novels and cartoons, so I'll give them some slack there. Now, I'm not going to get into the plot too much in this review, but I would like to comment on a few things. The protagonist of this film is a soldier called Duke, played by Channing Tatum, or Tatum. He was married to a woman named Anna, played by Sienna Miller, who is now on his bad side. There's a flashback scene in which Duke is proposing to Anna, but I found it to be quite awkward. I mean, there seems to be absolutely no chemistry between these two. Anna doesn't seem to be the least bit excited about getting married, and Duke doesn't even crack a smile. What's up with that? Then there's Ripcord, played by Marlon Wayans. Am I saying that right? Well, he's supposed to be the comedic relief in this film, but instead he just comes off as inept. Not to mention, 90% of his jokes just aren't funny. The guy who plays Breaker, I'm not even going to try to say his name, is much funnier. They should have stuck to him for the comedic relief, and moreover, they probably could have kept a serious tone throughout the movie and it wouldn't have suffered any. Another problem with G.I. Joe is that there's just too much action. There's way too much going on all throughout the movie, and even if the characters do stop to talk, it's rarely for more than 5 minutes, and most of these scenes are kinda useless and pointless anyway. I'm not saying we needed more character development per se, but if you try to string one high action scene after another, it gets kind of monotonous and boring. You have to earn those intense parts with more drama and storytelling in between. And then there's the encounter between a young Snake Eyes and a young Storm Shadow. At the beginning of the scene, it clearly establishes that they are in Tokyo, Japan, but Storm Shadow is obviously not speaking Japanese. Okay, I mean, I can accept that there are probably Chinese people in Japan, but that wasn't even established, so come on. I mean, you can't get away with those kinds of blunders nowadays. Maybe it flew in the 80s, but we're getting into 2010 here. Somehow, surprisingly, the movie manages to redeem itself in the last quarter or so. There are a few surprises and twists, one in particular that I won't mention here. The chemistry between Duke and Anna was a little more believable by the end of the movie. I'm not sure how they pulled that off, but they managed to take something that was pretty dry and turn it into something relatively interesting. Still, I was mostly underwhelmed and unimpressed with this film. Now I'd like to talk about the movie that I was impressed by. And I'm probably going to get some flack for saying this, but I'm going to talk about Dragon Ball Evolution. I thought that this movie was surprisingly good for what it was. It goes without saying that it doesn't bear much resemblance to the original Dragon Ball that Akira Toriyama, or Toriyama Akira, developed, but it still took influence from a lot of the good parts, I thought. For example, the humor in the movies is more or less what we've come to accustomed to in the original Dragon Ball series. I guess you could say that it's a little toned down or dumbed down, but enjoyable nonetheless. The original series had a lot of different characters, and obviously there's no way they could have fit them all in here, but they still picked a decent assortment, and some of my favorites were Chow Yun Fat as Master Roshi, of course, Emmy Rossum as Bulma, and Jamie Chung as Chi-Chi. And yeah, Goku isn't exactly the character we know and love, but one could say he's a little more relatable to a North American audience. He goes to school, wants to fit in, and date girls. Whether that's a good thing or not, I'll leave that up to you. I thought that the first 40 to 50 minutes of this movie were quite gripping, but it seems like they either ran out of budget or time after that point. They spent so much time building up to the climax, but then it happened so fast that you don't really have time to digest it. I'm not saying that the battle scenes had to be longer per se, but they could have broken them up a little more effectively. And of course, the ending of the movie sets it up for a sequel, but I'm certainly not holding my breath. I would love to see a sequel, but especially if they're able to make some improvements, but let's face it, this movie wasn't exactly a blockbuster. Maybe it's just the fact that I had low expectations for Dragon Ball, but I actually enjoyed it, unlike G.I. Joe. I hope you enjoyed my review. This may be my last review for a long time. I have to get a real job or something like that. You have to work twice as hard when it's honest, to quote Gone in 60 Seconds. Anyway, this is Adorable Andrew signing off.